Right, in today's episode I'm going to do a comparison video between the Fujifilm GFX100S medium format camera and the Hasselblad X2D medium format camera. But before I can do this video, we've got to drive across the border all the way to New York. Now, if you're a bit of a misery guts and you just want to skip straight ahead to the comparison part, I've put some chapter links down below. But if you enjoy the shenanigans, don't touch that dial and let's get cracking.
How long is the drive?
3 days. Buckle up. Now, I don't want to hear any whinging about this not being a scientific comparison. Of course it's not. This is me out in the field trying to get a serious shot for my next book. But first, that border crossing. Why do I always feel like a criminal when I'm crossing the border? I've done nothing wrong. I don't know why they make me feel so bad. Man, we're the only people going through. Look at this guy.
Oh, just on a canoe.
Help! I've been here for days, eh?
Cars, buses and RVs keep left. Will we get across? Okay.
Hello.
Hi. There you go.
You guys headed to?
Going all the way to upstate New York.
How are you staying?
Just a week.
Thank you.
Lovely, thanks a lot, mate. See ya. Easiest border crossing ever. We got through. Oh, that was great. Now I can relax now.
That was easy peasy.
Yeah.
Now we're good for a week until they don't let us back into
Yeah,
Canada.
exactly, yeah.
Gosh, we're in America.
We're in America.
Oh my god, it's so different.
It's exactly the same.
Now tell us, people from Maine, is it pronounced Bangor or Banger? What the bloody hell is that? I don't even...
This guy should really pull over.
What am I looking at? Oh, the characters you'll find on the interstate. So we just arrived at our beautiful campground, often known as Walmart. Where would RV campers be without Walmart? And the sunset was absolutely spectacular. Isn't it always the way? You get the best sunsets just as you're about to do grocery shopping. And it's 10 minutes to 10 p.m, so we've got 10 minutes before it closes to get at least something for breakfast. Do you think we'll get some good produce?
Probably some cheese. Oh, it looks like a super center. This is nothing like ours. Wow.
Now, I prefer the healthier food, but Amanda...
Chomps. Let's get a couple of those babies, maybe 4 of those.
And then I had to head straight for the painkillers because my leg was screaming. And then I thought I'd just chase that down with some lovely chocolate caramel mousse. Ah, yes. No, I guess not then.
You can't have that.
And then as soon as she wasn't looking, yes.
98, 35.
Wow.
It worked. Well, it's been a long day. We've made it to Bangor, Maine. Anyway, time to devour this dinner and get to bed. Rinse and repeat. Well, it's 6 a.m. and I've actually had 9 hours of sleep. But I still have a face like a set of death cookies that have been chewed on by some aggressive quintuplets. But I'm quite happy because today is the day that I pick up the GFX100S.
Have you used that one before?
You know I have. You were there. So it's actually day 3 of the road trip. We've skipped ahead because quite honestly it's boring watching people drive for 3 days.
And it was busy.
Stressful, so you don't want to see that. Anyway, we've got like a 2.5 hour drive, pick up the camera at a FedEx office, and then go about our business to the first location that I want to shoot at, and it is world class. Well, you must have known that there's a good reason why I would drive through 2 provinces and 3 states just to get a shot. Don't know about you, but there's nothing I enjoy more while I'm filling up my gas tank than being advertised to. Definitely gonna buy that. With my life savings poured into the petrol tank, it was time for collection. Right, we've just arrived at the FedEx ship centre, so I'm gonna pop in now pick up my GFX100S, and then it probably needs a charge. Stick it back in the camper and get it prepped for today's shoot. Let's see if they've got it. Well, there you go. Got my camera, got my lens. Just one camera, one lens. It's very heavy, love. I'm glad it's going in your camera bag, not mine. It's really heavy. Right, let's do an unboxing video, because everyone knows that you get millions of views if you do an unboxing. I've never understood it. That's why it's heavy. They've sent it in a big hard case. Spare battery, brilliant. Lens. We'll delete that bit. That's the 23mm prime. And then this is the GFX100S medium format camera, with which I am very well acquainted. If you've been watching this channel, you'll know from years ago that I got some of my best shots with this camera. Be nice if this is already charged, because then we can just get straight down to the shoot. Right, so I'm going to spend the next hour faffing around with this, dialing in all my favourite settings. Then we'll go and check into the campground, and then we'll go show you this beautiful state park.
Now, I knew this place would be very popular, so I booked ahead and we checked in and claimed our campsite.
So we got our spot. Let's go and get cozy.
That's beautiful here.
Okay, site 159 looks pretty good. Relatively flat. Would be so good if you had a backup camera.
Screaming children.
Oh, that's great. I love screaming kids. I really do. Well, at least we got earplugs.
Once all the barking dogs and screaming kids finally calmed down, I set up my camera to film this little bit.
So what could possibly make one of these cameras better than the other? Because they've both got the same sensor. So aside from that, the only other differences really you can have is the user experience in terms of the interface and the features on the camera, but also how it renders those finished images. And so if you read up on the blurb that Hasselblad has put out there, they're trying to poise the X2D as having superior image quality in terms of colours and details, which as a landscape photographer is very interesting to me. And as you know, I've got some experience with the GFX100S. I've captured some of my best images with that camera, and the reason why I've driven 2,000 miles to come to this specific location is this probably has one of the most spectacular waterfalls I have ever seen, and because it's summer, everything is super bright green, and Hasselblad is kind of claiming that they render greens in a superior way to the Fujifilm cameras. And if that is true, then I will be very interested to see it put into practice, because as a landscape photographer, I'm surrounded by green most of the year. It's a very prominent colour in my photography, so it's quite an important thing for me. So I'm going to put these two cameras in my camera bag and then hobble down in that canyon with my crippled leg and see if I can not only get an absolutely world-class shot for my next book, but also try and figure out which of these cameras does better justice to a scene like this. So apparently in 1 mile there are 19 waterfalls, but I've got my eye on one in particular.
But my timing was terrible, with the summer crowds being just so busy. Perhaps I had unrealistic expectations.
So this is what it's all about. This is what I've driven, I don't know, 2,000 miles to shoot, and this is the location that I specifically wanted to test these two cameras head to head, the Fujifilm GFX100S and the Hasselblad X2D, because they're supposed to be amazing with dynamic range, they're supposed to be amazing with colours. Well, what better location than this? And I reckon if I'm lucky, the light's good, I might just get a book-worthy shot. In fact, maybe even a book cover. You know, I don't know. I was hoping it would rain and we would get more saturated wetness in all of this, but I'll take this. So I'm going to set up my camera and see what the first few shots look like. But which one first? The Fuji
or the Hasselblad. Spoilt for choice. Okay, so first up is the Hasselblad. And even though the light is perfect, the conditions are perfect, it's just extremely busy right now. So getting a shot without people in it is going to be a bit challenging. I can put together a bunch of shots that are shot at different times and make the people disappear, but I think it'd be far better if I just came here at 6 o'clock in the morning and perhaps there's just nobody here. But I'll take the shot, and I'll take another shot with the GFX100S. But to be honest, I think I can only class these as test shots, really, because the ultimate test will be to just get one shot, no bracketing, no focus stacking, none of that. Just get the image in one shot on both cameras and then compare them. I think that's more of a fairer comparison than doing a whole bunch of Photoshop work. But oh, what a location. I'm absolutely thrilled with this. Okay, now I'm using a 21mm prime on this, which, to be honest with you, is a little bit too wide for this scene. I prefer to be at about 50mm, but this is all I got with this camera, is just a 21mm prime. So with the GFX100S, I got a 23mm prime. Not quite the same, but they should be fairly close in composition. Oh, the light's just got a bit brighter. And already I can see that the colours on the back of the screen with the Hasselblad, they're just outrageous. Hopefully the finished image has those same beautiful, vibrant colours. They look really vibrant, but not too saturated, and that's important because I don't like over-saturated images. It's 2023 after all. One thing that I can tell you about the Hasselblad is that the image stabilization is unbelievable. Basically, I can shoot a long exposure handheld at 0.3 of a second to get motion blur in the water, and everything else around it is crystal sharp handheld. I've just got it set to panorama mode and I'm just composing shots on the fly and getting them with just one click, no faffing about, and hopefully I can recover the really bright highlights in the water. And if I can, this might change everything for waterfall photography. Unbelievable.
Okay, let's take a look at this handheld long exposure from the Hasselblad X2D. I decided I'd show you the JPEG straight out of camera, and I've done absolutely zero processing, so you can imagine what you'd be able to do with the raw file. So if I zoom in to 100%, you can clearly see a ton of detail, but I've still got that lovely motion blur in the water, and the greens look amazing. And while I do like how contrasted the image is straight out of camera, I'd be tempted to lift some of the detail out of those shadows, which I can easily do with that raw file.
Alright, so now I've got the Fuji, I'm trying to image stabilization, long exposure. It seems to not be quite as good as the Hasselblad. I'm able to get a fairly sharp image at 1/10 of a second. I would rather have a longer exposure than that. With the Hasselblad, I was able to shoot a lot longer without any blur. With this one, once I tend to get to like 0.3 of a second, which I'll try now, let's just dial in. That's 0.3 of a second now. Let's see how this turns out.
So obviously this is overexposed, even though I'm using the same settings as the Hasselblad, and that's just because the sun got brighter. So you'd think it would be sharper, but if we zoom in, you can see that it's actually blurry. So I stopped down to f14 to reshoot the image, and at 1/6 of a second, the motion blur is still quite nice, and we've got some acceptable detail. However, if we put it side by side with the X2D shot, I'm going to say that the Hasselblad performed better in terms of sharpness and detail when it comes to a handheld long exposure. But let's try this a few more times under more stable lighting conditions.
Now I won't know till I get these on the computer screen as to how good they are, but on the back of the camera, that's pretty usable, and it's got a nice motion blur on the water. So I think both of these cameras can do a long exposure pretty well. It just feels like off the bat the Hasselblad manages to do a longer shutter speed.
With my bludgeoned leg, I shambled down the stairs, possessing the agility of a heavily pregnant hippo.
Now normally I jump the fence, go over the barrier and start wading up the river, but I think that's kind of frowned upon in this state park. I'll probably get into trouble. Plus my legs gibbled anyway, so all I could really shoot is compositions from the main trail, but even then, it is absolutely stunning. I think this thing's gonna hold us up. I've seen better days at post. Oh god, this is sketchy. Sketchy for a gibbled leg. Oh, look at this.
Oh yes, that'll do for me.
That's a shot right there. I think I found my second shot of the day. But there were so many people coming through and it was a really tight spot. I didn't dare get my tripod out, so I just put this on image stabilization and I'm able to shoot a third of a second at f10 and it is crystal sharp with motion blur. I might not need a tripod any longer. Sorry FLM, but I think we're done.
So here's that handheld shot with the Hasselblad X2D straight out of the camera, but it's quite dark, so let me show you a processed RAW file because I just needed to boost those shadows so you could see what's going on. And if I zoom into the area where I focused, which is this brick wall here, you'll see that it is ridiculously sharp for a handheld exposure at 0.3 seconds. Brilliant. So now let's try the same thing with the GFX100S.
Right, I'm going to try and get the same shot with the Fuji, but I can't see what the hell I'm doing. Standard image size, 4:3. Alright, let's see what I can get here. So I'll go f8. Okay, third of a second. Alright, well that looks pretty good too. You know, on the back of the camera it seems really dark, but I should be able to really lift out those details, and I think this is fairly sharp. Again, I won't really know until I get them on the computer and do a side-by-side comparison, but so far the Fuji looks okay on the back of the camera.
Now let's take a look at the JPEG from the GFX100S, and just like the XD2 shot, it's kind of dark. So let's look at the RAW file, and what I've done is I've pasted the exact same develop settings from Adobe Camera Raw that I used on the Hasselblad shot, so that the shadows and the highlights should be controlled in a similar way. If I zoom in though, you'll see that the detail on the area of focus, which again is these bricks, is nowhere near as clean and sharp as the Hasselblad. So let's put them side by side at 100%. And you can see a huge difference in detail and sharpness and quality. But you'll notice that the X2D was shot at ISO 800, whereas the GFX100S shot was shot at ISO 100, which should have resulted in a cleaner image from the Fujifilm. Now, I'm not a scientist, I'm a photographer, so perhaps having a higher ISO makes the image stabilization work better. If that's the case, post a comment and let me know, but I wouldn't have thought it would make that much difference.
Well, the magic is happening. Look at this business. This is ridiculous. The sun is just coming at this diagonal, slashing straight through this cascade here. I mean, just look at what it's doing on the bottom of the falls there. Absolutely tremendous. I don't have long, so I'm just going to shoot this as fast as I can on both the Hasselblad and the GFX100S. Maybe talk about the composition afterwards, and then we'll have a right good look at these RAW files and these JPEGs as well.
And just as I was filming this very B-roll clip that you're watching right now, you can actually see the moment where the sun fades off and the magic light is gone.
So I just got set up with the Fuji and the Hasselblad side by side, almost the same composition. The light was magical. Took my first shot, the light just faded off, and yeah, I'm hoping it comes back. I'm sure it will come back. Yeah.
time.
Okay, after about an hour of the light constantly changing, I managed to find 5 minutes where I could get both cameras on the exact same tripod to try and capture almost the exact same shot. And what I've gone for is this really nice panorama. Let me just show you in the back of the Fuji. So what I've gone for is this delightful pano, this 65 to 24. So you got the cascade dripping down on the left, and then the canyon almost in the center, just slightly off center. And I don't know if you can see it, but then there's the guardrail that comes along here with the trail. So it's a really nice sort of typical trail shot, and I've done the exact same composition with the X2D.
So let's address Hasselblad's very bold claim to offer superior colours. You're looking at JPEGs straight out of the camera with no processing other than whatever is built into the camera's image processor. What you'll probably notice is that the X2D image on the top appears to have brighter greens both in the highlights, as shown on this mossy rock here, and also perhaps in the mid-tones over here on this rocky cliff on the right. So I will give it to Hasselblad that their colours do look better straight out of camera, but I'm pretty confident that I could achieve the same result with the Fujifilm RAW file if I spent a little bit of time tweaking it in post. Here's another colour comparison with these two RAW files. I shot a very similar composition on both cameras with just a few seconds in between, and neither lens had a CPL. And yet the difference is pronounced, with much more pleasing colours in the X2D shot. So I don't know what kind of Swedish witchcraft is going on, but to me, the Hasselblad colours look a lot more like what I was seeing with the naked eye.
So at this point, you're probably wondering, Gavin, out of these two brilliant cameras, which one would you buy if you were in the market for a medium format camera? Well, for me, I'm kind of forced to choose the GFX100S simply because in my job, I need to record video. The Hasselblad X2D does not record video. It is purely a stills camera. But I will say this, if I didn't need to record video, if I was purely in it for stills photography, then I absolutely would prefer the Hasselblad X2D because those colours are just absolutely gorgeous straight out of the camera. And then of course the image stabilization, being able to shoot a handheld long exposure waterfall shot with no tripod was extremely liberating, and I've never seen results like that with any of the cameras that I've used, let alone the GFX100S. Now, I'm not knocking the Fujifilm GFX100S. I still think it's a brilliant camera, and it's quite a bit more affordable than the Hasselblad X2D, but there is something, let's just call it sexy, about that Hasselblad camera that every time I went out on a shoot, I was drawn more towards the X2D than the GFX. I can't really define what it was, but that's what I found myself doing. So there you go. In a nutshell, if you need video, it's going to be the GFX. If you don't need video, you're probably going to fall in love with the Hasselblad X2D. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it the old thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to tickle my bell. Now, if you want to watch some more medium format adventures, check out this video here, where I was shooting up in the Canadian Rockies just a couple of years ago, and I got some of my best images of all time. Absolutely gorgeous conditions, gorgeous light, wonderful shenanigans. Check that one out. I think you're going to like it. Bye-bye.